What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today it is going to be day 1 of 2 of this 3-round 2025 NFL mock draft with trades. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Below my face is my board. It is extremely unique, but I back it up, and it's a completely honest board. If you want to see all 22 clips that do reinforce my opinion, feel free to go check me out on Twitter. It's easy to get through that link tree. That was tough. But today, we're going to do something special. We're going to do something that I've been wanting to do for a while, but I haven't had the balls to do it. But because we always do a mock draft every week, it can be put in the past really quickly if it doesn't go well, or maybe we can just continue it a lot more in the future, and that is putting the quarterbacks outside of the top 10. So it's going to be pretty ballsy. It's going to be extremely unique, but it's something I've been really wanting to do. And I know you guys have been asking me for this theory to be tested out, and we are in the postseason, so it is something where we're going to be able to do it. So let's get on with it. Let's have a great time. If you guys love mock drafts, I already did a 2-rounder this week. I do a 2-round no-trade mock draft every single week on top of a 3-round mock draft every single week. Again, day 2, just like the NFL draft, rounds 2 and 3 are tomorrow. If you do see a 3-round mock draft that's completed in 30 to 50 minutes, probably not the best mock draft. But let's get into this with the number 1 overall pick with the Tennessee Titans. I think it's a great idea to try to find someone to trade down with. But the problem is, I don't think there's a genuine player at a position that doesn't have proper depth that's worth moving up for, right? I think Abdul Carter's awesome. Granted, I'm a little bit lower on him, air quotes, lower. I mean, I still love him to death, than the consensus. I think he's a little bit more limited in terms of being primarily a designated pass rusher. So, I mean, Abdul Carter's great, but even then, edge class, super duper deep, right? You're not going to get someone to spend multiple ones when there are guys, and I know I'm absolutely batshit crazy about Braden Swinson. Let's not even talk about it, all right? Like, we'll just let it sizzle, let it just stick there. I'm going to always blend my board with realism and tend to be a lot more on the side of realism, where I'll show you guys how I feel, but I want to give you guys something that you can actually take away and believe that you either learn something or else have a better understanding of what the draft should be shaking out like. So at the number 1 pick, though, there's just not really a really good strategy here, in my opinion, to be able to entice teams to move up to 1. It's so expensive. And I don't think the quarterbacks are worth the number 1 pick. And there's a lot of people that don't have a first-round grade on the quarterbacks. So how can I justify it outside of saying desperation? But at the same time, desperation doesn't make you force a quarterback. It might do it to extend your job a year, but it also get your ass fired really quickly if you do fail. And the Titans relatively failed on Will Levis, even though they did a good job in terms of, at the time it was a smart move. Everybody loved it. In retrospect, not so much. But let's go after Travis Hunter here. I think that you can use him as a corner if you want to, but more importantly, and I think this is super key, this allows Travis to be the wide receiver that he probably wants to be in the long run. Wide receiver 24 makes the same as corner 4. It's wide receiver 23 and corner 4 make the same amount of money. That's ridiculous. It's a big disparity. And I can totally see Travis Hunter being used like Tyler Boyd in this offense. You just go after the best player available, and you guys will see how I develop this. I do have a strategy in mind, and again, there are 3 rounds to this, so stay tuned. But I'm going to be a big spoiler here. I already have this pre-planned out in my head. I don't know if it's going to fall this way, but we might be picking twice in the first. So let's go with Travis Hunter at number 1. Just stay with me. Stay with me there. At number 2 for the Cleveland Browns, a lot of really good selections. Again, I'm forcing myself to not take quarterback in the top 10, because I do think that we need to push ourselves to the reality of maybe these teams don't actually love them as much as we think they do. And I think it's fair to say it is very possible that these quarterbacks don't go in the top 10, and it makes me uncomfortable and makes you uncomfortable too, but let's test this theory out. Let's stay together on this. For the Cleveland Browns, I think edge 2 with Abdul Carter is going to be a great position to fill. Will Johnson's another one that you can definitely bring into the equation. But if I'm going to be real, if you really hate the Travis Hunter pick, you could swap it with the Abdul Carter pick, and I'm not going to bitch and moan at all. I think it's a fine move for both teams. I do think Travis Hunter, with the flexibility of being a potential safety as well, because I think that's his ultimate fallback position, is he can end up with the zone skills and the ball skills. The zone IQ and the ball skills could end up being on the tier of the greats at safety. Like legitimately, I could see a Hall of Fame career out of Travis Hunter at that, but he fits perfectly into Brian Callahan's system, like perfectly as a receiver into that Tyler Boyd role. And I would love to see him continue to take advantage of that. And you will see why in a little bit. Fingers crossed I don't shoot myself in the foot, but let's keep moving. Number 3, New York Giants. There's a lot of good routes that you can go. Technically, you can get a sexy Dexy pairing here with Mason Graham. That would be a little bit ludicrous, but I do think getting a quality corner is super duper key on this team. Yes, the quarterback position is key, and I do think we can end up making a move for a particular quarterback, but maybe let's wait a little bit before being able to trade for a veteran / someone who's still kind of young in their career. And I'm going to go Will Johnson. Going the best player available is never a bad idea. You know, I think that's super duper key. You guys analyzed and realized that you guys needed a true boundary corner last year. The Hard Knocks offseason showed it. You guys were looking at Kool-Aid, Kamari, and they got taken right before you. So, I mean, they were taken back to back. I mean, it's just like, woof. And so you got Will Johnson here to fulfill that boundary role, continue to develop that secondary, and continue going best player available. At number 4 for the New England Patriots, I think this is a great opportunity to trade back if you can. The problem is I don't really see a lot of teams that are that desperate to move up for Mason Graham. I mean, the Cowboys aren't going to send 2 1s to move up for Mason Graham. I just don't think that's a smart move for either franchise. Well, I guess the Patriots, if you move back that far, that wouldn't be too shabby. But at the same time, like I don't see like any of these teams. I don't think that the Saints are going to get that ballsy. So I don't think it's going to happen there. I just don't see many teams. Carolina could try to jump the Jaguars. You can see the Jets try to do it with their extra picks, but it's not super easy to just like pull the trigger. You know what? I do think the Jets could be in the market though. For Mason Graham, he's going to be taken at pick number 5 regardless. So keep that in mind as well. Like he is going to be that selection. So the Jets could try to make this enticing, or the Patriots could just say, hey, we're not going to move back and potentially lose our guy to the Raiders, which the guy I'm thinking of is Tetairoa McMillan. I know you can move back and go offensive tackle at 7, and I think that's a perfectly reasonable move. But the guy who I'm trying to target, since T. Higgins has now been leaning far more towards the Cincinnati Bengals from what you guys have been saying, and overall it looks like the sentiment is that he should be back. I do think actually the smartest move is to have both offers on the table, but to take the one that makes you move the least. And the Jaguars do have extra draft capital. I think a pick 92 or a 106 could be sufficient. And maybe I'll end up tossing in 142. Like I'll toss in 215 just to add a little bit of sugar, a little bit of spice there. But the Jaguars trading a 3rd round pick to secure their guy while the Jets are trying to move up. I can guarantee you the Panthers would not be like out of the equation to move up for him. I think it's worth sending in. I don't think the Jaguars are in that dire of a position to where I would feel like very uncomfortable. Like maybe I'll do 142 and like I could send it and pick like 180 or something. I don't really like the fact that I was only sending 215 back for the Jaguars. I think they need to get requisite value, and I'm going to buy it with pick number 180. So Jacksonville still maintains a solid positioning, but they ended up basically sending a 3rd round pick, actually a little bit more than a 3rd round pick, in order to secure a little bit less, my bad, a little bit less than a 3rd round pick to secure their guy in Mason Graham, which if you could say, hey, I'd rather have whoever falls to 5 and then, because right now we've taken like all the players I really want, person at 5 plus a 3rd round pick or Mason Graham. I'm going to take Mason Graham for this team 10 out of 10 times. I really do think that with Mason Graham and Mason Smith, you guys could really have a good defensive interior. I don't see really many players worth trading up for at pick 5 outside of Tetairoa McMillan. So you would have been maybe able to squeeze a team that is trying to rebuild in the Saints for being able to move up. But man, the options are really limited and you could have really screwed yourself if you stay there. But regardless, I'm going to do this pick with the Patriots. We're going to go Tetairoa McMillan at 5. I do think tackle is a very reasonable pick, but I also think in round 2 with guys like Josh Connerly, who just declared, I do think it's certainly reasonable to go after your true number 1 receiver here and then focus on the tackle in the latter. Pick number 6 for the Las Vegas Raiders. This is going to be a massive curveball. This is going to piss a lot of people off, but Tom Telesco He is the one who actually traded up for Melvin Gordon. So he has experience there. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he's also been part of taking another running back relatively high as well. But regardless, he has it in his pedigree to be willing to take running back relatively high. You're going to have a new head coach in there as well. And the easiest way, when you could go quarterback here, but again, I want you guys to understand the premise of this video. The premise is we're pushing them outside of the top 10. Now you could say, oh, like we're going to game it, we're going to scheme it, we're going to move outside the top 10 and take them. I'm not doing that. I'm not saying like, oh, these teams really want them here and we're just like not allowing them to. No, I'm saying that these teams literally don't value these guys as top 10 picks. Like that's the theory we're working on here. So again, keep with me there. So I'm going to go Ashton Jeanty here. Bottom line, Telesco's taken running back in the first before. The Raiders have taken running back in the first before. I think they need to value running back more in the first, and I do think that it is a curveball, but when you look at history and you look at where running backs of Ashton Jeanty's caliber have been taken, they are within the top 10. Jahmyr Gibbs also was taken at 6th overall. They were praising the Lord Jesus that he fell to 12. So he was supposed to be taken at 6, Bijan at 8, Saquon at 2. It makes sense that when you have a caliber back on the tier of Ashton Jeanty, which, yes, I have Amari Hampton above, but that's solely because Ashton Jeanty has 8 fumbles over the past 2 years, and I'm an absolute fanatic of Amari Hampton. It just shows to me that Ashton Jeanty is someone who could be a massive difference maker, and if you're not getting a quarterback at 6, and then stay with me, certainly possible, you guys are going to be able to mitigate the risk by being able to get someone with really good running talent, and you guys have a solid O-line. You do. And if you add Ashton Jeanty to that, things might get a lot easier, especially if you put in a quarterback that's a lot cheaper than the number 6 overall pick. And number 7 for the New York Jets. A lot of really good options here. Not anybody who is going to be garnering a lot of attention for a move up. As much as I love James Pierce and Braden Swinson, none of them are going to be garnering that excitement and that propulsion to be like, oh shit, we need to move up and take this guy. If you guys are new to my show, I always have Ben Morrison returning in these, and I always have it in the description, so I should be saying it more early in the video, but if Ben Morrison comes out, that's the pick for me. I love Ben Morrison. Hip injury or not, I think he is the second best corner in the class by a noticeable margin. But Ben Morrison, I'm having him return as a true junior who has a season-ending injury off a pretty poor year. I'm going to say he should stay, but that's going to be the big caveat. With him off the board, I don't see anybody moving up for anybody, and I think the biggest position that no one wants to talk about is the fact that both of their veteran offensive tackles are gone. They're both on one-year deals, and Kelvin Banks has had a meteoric rise this year in terms of the consistency. I think he's too leveraged nose over the toes. That's my big issue with Kelvin Banks, but if that's my one nitpick, that is relatively easy to correct. Simply put, hey, just continue checking yourself to sit more into your heels when you engage with somebody. And over time, you build that muscle memory. You have Olu Fashanu, and then you have Kelvin Banks there. I think that's a duo for success. You guys like the mobility. Kelvin Banks doesn't really provide that mobility. Josh Simmons might be a better fit if you guys are truly looking for the pure mover. But I think Kelvin Banks is just more consistent. And not than Josh Simmons. You guys know what I think of Josh Simmons. That's why I have my board below my face. It's more so to show you guys what I think rather than what the draft is going to be. But Josh Simmons is a great choice. I actually wouldn't mind doing it. Low key, it would be a smart move. Based on the fact that you guys like mobility, Josh Simmons is a really good athlete. We're going to go Josh Simmons, actually. It's going to be the curveball in the top 10. I think the health is certainly there. Kelvin Banks is awesome, but we're going to go Josh Simmons there in the top 10. Again, nobody worth trading up for. At number 8 for the Carolina Panthers, somebody ended up bringing this up, and I think it's a very good point. As much as I think Jalen Walker is pretty much a linebacker that should be rushing, that is perfectly in the role of Frankie Louvu. And pretty obvious that Frankie Louvu's role on the Carolina Panthers still could be a massive upgrade. So we're going to go Jalen Walker there at pick number 8. Again, we're not having any trades outside of that 4 and 5 range there in the top 10. New Orleans Saints, another team that we could try to trade out of this spot. I just don't really see many teams being overwhelmingly moved to try to make a move up here. Greer does not value offensive line enough to do that. Otherwise, that would be probably my primary target to jump to teams that are looking at offensive line. So with all that being said, I think that the Saints, you could be in the mood for someone like curveball Arianti Ursary. Don't think that's the smart thing to do, but I do think the Saints are perfectly in the market for Mykel Williams. You still need to upgrade that edge position. I've been a big Mykel hater for the majority of the year, but that's because he had a slow start, and that's also because of the ankle injury, high ankle sprain. The dude, when he's getting healthier and healthier and healthier, has gotten better and better and better. And that's something I absolutely love about Mykel. Even in some of his worst games, when healthy, he's been really good and much improved over the year before. I think a team like the Saints absolutely will fall in love with that. He does have that top 10 prototypical size, so he goes right after his teammate in Jalen Walker. At number 10 for the Chicago Bears, again, we're having the quarterbacks be pushed out of the top 10 because that's a theory. That's a very realistic and very possible theory. For the Bears, I think the smart thing to do is Kelvin Banks here. Get a true left tackle. You could kick him to guard if you need to, but just get yourself someone who is a high-quality offensive lineman. If you didn't like the Josh Simmons pick for the Jets and wanted Kelvin Banks, I am perfectly happy flipping the two. I don't think that there's going to be... It's not going to move me in any way, shape, or form, but Kelvin Banks goes at pick number 10. Someone who will be rising probably into my top 15 above Will Campbell. I just want to put that out there. I haven't finished my offensive tackle re-evaluations, so be patient, please. At number 11 for the San Francisco 49ers, they're going Will Campbell all day. I think that Banks' spot could be a great spot for him to go. But honestly, I still think he could be a serviceable tackle. The arm length is a little bit of a concern, but I do think Will Campbell, even if he's forced at tackle, will not have the struggles that I think myself and others have that feeling he could, because a lot of us thought of him as the number one offensive lineman in the class guaranteed, which I do think he definitely competes with it, but I do think he also is still a very competitive offensive tackle, just maybe a little bit better at the guard spot with his length and spatial awareness issues. At number 12 for the Dallas Cowboys, I think there's a couple moves that you can make here. You can talk about Luther Burden and Emeka Egbuka. I certainly do believe that wide receiver is reasonable. Technically, tight end's an underrated position for this team to go, because I think I'm trying to remember if EPA-wise, or I'm forgetting the statistic, but your tight end group is one of the worst in terms of productivity. Don't quote me on that, but I'm quoting somebody else who ended up bringing that up. So feel free to confirm or deny it. But I'm looking at Malachi Starks here, and not for the Cowboys, but I know for a fact that I'd take him at 13 to the Dolphins. And I'm seeing a team right here in the Colts where, yeah, I've been going tight end so much, but there's not a guarantee that you guys are going to want a tight end in the first round. As much of a super weapon as Tyler Warren is, I still think there's a chance that he does end up slipping. And I think that Malachi Starks is a Swiss Army knife that you can have in your backfield, and it's going to be a really good player. So we're actually going to make that move. The Indianapolis Colts, you don't have to spend much to move up here. Pick 120, got 17 to 15. I'm going to say for the Cowboys, I'd be perfectly happy with that on its own. You could just send pick 116 to move up 2 spots. Technically, again, it's a little bit of an underpay, but the Colts end up getting Malachi Starks. And Malachi has had a couple games where he got roasted and toasted, but that's primarily because I think when he goes in the slot versus a more athletic wide receiver, i.e. Matt Golden, he can get cooked. And maybe don't put a player who is a little bit limited on athleticism in the slot versus someone who is a track star. I think that's just called bad coaching if you do that. So I'm going to call out Georgia there for putting their player in the bad position and not adjusting mid-game, because we all make mistakes. But, if you don't learn from them, you have no one to blame but yourself. At number 13 for the Miami Dolphins, I don't think Greer respects offensive line enough to be ballsy and go after a Tyler Booker, Wyatt Milam, Arianti Ursary. So I'm going to throw that out. And yes, Arianti Ursary would play a guard role and then have the future potentially as a tackle if Patrick Paul cannot be consistent in the long run. I think tight end's underrated, but Jonnu Smith should return, and he's going to be he's just someone who's going to be like the lifeblood of that offense. He was so good this year. Got me to the championship I lost the championship. It got me to second place in my fantasy league, just a random pickup. But I do think defensive interior is a very underrated position on the Dolphins, and I want to be able to give more credit to this player because I think he's had a really, really strong postseason as well. And that's Tyleik Williams. Tyleik Williams has been fantastic. I mean, going up against more and more talented teams, he's gotten better and better. He was someone who had like a 4% pass rush win rate at the start of the year, and it was also like 4% run stop rate. This dude has climbed up those numbers tremendously. And even though the numbers aren't super sexy on their own, I also want to put it into context that Ohio State doesn't really do a very good job of training their defensive interiors how to be able to get to the quarterback. So how I evaluate my defensive interiors from Ohio State in terms of pass rush potential is, can you get off blocks while you're pass rushing? And Tyleik Williams is one of the best block shedders in the class. And that's why he's so good against the run as well, is because he can get through an offensive lineman really quickly. And I think that as he continues to apply himself, developing himself as a pass rusher, I really do think he could grow into something truly special. So I'm actually going to take him here. It is a little bit early, but he is someone who I have a ton of confidence in, and he's someone who is just going to be a damn good hit. And sometimes that's all you need. You put him with Chop Robinson. Chop was a little bit more of a stretch project, and he's done a really good job. I think being able to have a real quality 330-pound, flexible, athletic, and disruptive defensive interior is something that really is underrated in terms of a need. And I think Tyleik Williams can make people feel very comfortable with himself at 13 once he gets into the league. And number 14 for the Dallas Cowboys, a lot of really good options that you can go, but I am going to put my stamp of approval on Omarion Hampton. He's pretty much everyone's RB2. I wanted to be able to get a little bit more value for the Cowboys, so we got that pick 116 as well, and we're going to go to Omarion Hampton. I think he's an absolute stud. He has the craziest growth I've ever seen from a running back, and he was somebody who I genuinely did not like at the start of the year. Like, him and Drew Aller both were the biggest risers, but Omarion is on a different tier. He went from someone who I thought stumbled into success, didn't really read the holes right, to someone who I genuinely saw planning his, rerouting himself down the field and reacting in real time, proactively as well, adjusting for how the defense was shifting during the play. And it was just a cerebral level of IQ. And I do have a running back video out on it, so you guys can go check it out. But I really do think that he is on another level as a running back, a true blue chip level player that I think the Cowboys could be able to really thrive with. At number 15 for the Atlanta Falcons, I'm going to go after an edge rusher here, and that's James Pierce. I know you can get a little sexy and go after Jihad Campbell. I wouldn't mind either way. But James Pierce is my kind of guy. I think he's well worth the selection. I think he's just a damn good player. And, he's a little bit on the smaller side, but I really do think he has a much better anchor and speed to power ratio than what normally comes with 243 pounds at 6'5". James Pierce is a damn good player. You guys need to send as much relative capital as possible at that edge position, and I think it's a great way to start. At pick number 16 for the Arizona Cardinals, I would look right now at two players. That's Nick Scordon and Jihad Campbell. Jihad Campbell would be playing edge for you guys, but the reason why I'm going to lean Nick Scordon here is for this primary reason. Nick Scordon is going to be basically the polished, relatively more athletic version of Robinson that you drafted last year. And that's going to be very valuable. And it's something that is worth being able to put on this team. And this is why. So first off, you can use him on the interior. That's what's awesome. 285 pounds, a really good player. He's a good block shedder as well. But when you look at the types that would be similar to Jihad Campbell, you have B.J. Ojulari and Zaven Collins. You also have Xavier Thomas. You also very well might have Baron Browning. Adding a fifth player into that versus a second player into that relative rotation there with Robinson is going to be a lot more impactful in my opinion. And Nick Scordon is not just your standard 280-pound fat dude who, just can pretty much overwhelm a player with speed or with weight. But Nick Scordon is someone who has finesse. He has technique. And he was somebody who was my edge one coming into the year and had a little bit of a slow start, but a very strong finish. And to me, that's somebody that has multiple years of success at a great frame and doesn't act the way that a normal player does at that frame. He's very similar to Marshawn Kneeland, who I'm excited to see bounce back for the Cowboys next year coming off his ACL. But Nick Scordon, I think, is going to be a really big get there for the Cardinals. Could have went defensive interior, but it is what it is. At number 17 for the Cincinnati Bengals, a lot of really good picks here. And honestly, the pick that I'm really looking at right now is not for this team, but you got the tight end still on the board. The tight end's got to come off. And I'm looking at a lot of teams that, to be fair, the tight ends are here. There is one other position, one other player. and that's Arianti Ursary. I really do think that there is a massive threat, and I mean a massive threat to the Rams right now. Yes, you could be picking up Alaric Jackson, but at the same time, or like re-signing Alaric Jackson, I think there's a big risk with allowing him to go to the Seahawks. I'd rather have Alaric Jackson on a 2-year, 3-year deal, even at that, which means like it's a 2 or a 1-year deal based on guarantees, and have him sit and develop rather than let him go to my own division rival. I would hate it. I would personally hate it because you're arming the Seahawks with someone truly special. So I'm going to be moving up here with the Los Angeles Rams. Whether you want to deploy Ursary, I'm going to actually have it just primarily be for the 100th pick. Because again, 17 to 15 was pick 120. This is a far higher value for a much lower value trade relative. Like it's about the same, but when you talk about each spot, incremental spot, it is a little bit lower. Like you can end up talking about like 180, like 124, and then get 152 back. If you really want to be a stickler, not going to really affect the mock draft, FYI. But the Rams could be in the market for a quarterback as well. I don't think that they're going to pull the trigger in this draft. I do think they could try to play the Moneyball game, but regardless, the Bengals have now moved back, and it allows the Rams to be able to move up and select their player here in Arianti Ursary, their future left tackle, but also someone who could fill in at guard roles in the short run as he continues to polish into the future left tackle of this team, kind of be your Whitworth for the team, funnily enough, who also played for Cincinnati as well as Los Angeles. At 18, the Seattle Seahawks are like, damn, we don't really have a legitimate option to be able to put at that right tackle spot off the bat in case of injury. I mean, you do, though, with Cam Williams, but it's not the same. Cam Williams is someone who still needs to heavily develop. Arianti Ursary is far more ready day one. Williams is just someone who is very, very, very toolsy. And I think what the Rams have done is they spent a 3rd-round pick to be able to essentially pinhole the Seahawks into a player that fits them worse in Ursary. But they can go Cam Williams, or they could go after Tyler Booker. There's 2 routes you can go here. I prefer to go after someone who does have tackle experience, and I'm going to go Cam Williams here, FYI. But I did significantly weaken the Seahawks' chances of being able to choose between a player who I think fits them perfectly in Ursary and someone who I think will be a little bit more of a project, but still a massive upgrade there in Cam Williams. If I'm the Rams and I can end up disarming or at least choosing who I'm going to face in my own division, especially at a tackle position, which Cam Williams will be playing guard as he progresses and develops. But Cam Williams is just far more behind the curve, in my opinion, than Arianti Ursary, especially in terms of the instant impact at guard. I think Ursary could be really, really good. Cam Williams could be very good, but again, you're paying for the luxury of having your own guy while also choosing who your nemesis is going to be. At number 19 for the Houston Texans, I'm going to go Emeka Egbuka here. And this is the reason why. I always go Luther Burden, but Emeka Egbuka does have that connection apparently with CJ Stroud. You guys have brought this up several times. And Emeka Egbuka, I think that he's going to be a massive asset on this team. You guys are going to be without Stephon Diggs, he was on a 1-year deal, without Tank Dell, even though Stephon Diggs kind of in his OBJ portion of his career where he's kind of more of a name than an actual asset. Hot take, but so Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, unfortunate, very unfortunate injury. And then for part of the year, Nico Collins, because he's just very unreliably healthy. So you take those 3 out of the equation for certain games, you really are having a skeleton crew. And so having Emeka Egbuka there, especially since you're losing 2 and you're pretty much going to have Nico as your primary, and then you have some guys who are some really good role players there, I think Emeka Egbuka could be a really solid constant that, when healthy, praying to God, because this past year he was really healthy and he was playing through some injuries the year before in 2022. I think that could be a really big get and a really big help there to CJ Stroud. And number 20 for the Denver Broncos, this is an easy one. I love it. Tyler Warren. He shouldn't be here, but he is going to be. He's a little bit athletically limited, so we're going to talk about like the Brock Bowers of it all. Like the Rams could have tried to do that, but the Rams went after someone who could take a slant to the house. Like Brock Bowers will never be replicated. And I love Tyler Warren. He's my 17th overall player, but there was something different about Brock Bowers. He was my number 2 overall player. So I do want to put that into context, even though like I've been the one who's taken Tyler Warren as high as 7. I think it's certainly possible, but I do think realistically it's going to be more in this latter half of the first. At number 21 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, this is a quick and easy one for me. It's Jihad Campbell. He's a perfect linebacker slash edge rusher, depending on, your vision for him. But I think for Drew Tryon Shoyinka is the perfect replacement. He is such a good edge rusher, man. He was edge 3 coming out of high school. And then he ended up transitioning to linebacker due to the massive quantity of edge rushers there at Alabama. And I still see so much with him. And my favorite part about his game is the way he times the snap. It is ludicrous. So big fan of Jihad Campbell there. At 22 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Remember 2022? How we took a quarterback at number 20? This is where we're going to have the quarterbacks go. We're going Cam Ward to the Pittsburgh Steelers. We might bring back Justin on a 1-year deal. Like, Russ and Justin both haven't earned the right to be a true full-time starting quarterback. Like, they've earned the right to have another shot, but we're going to say, hey, these outside of the first round grades on these quarterbacks, now we're starting to get to the point where we can really start talking about it, and Cam Ward's going to be the selection there. At 23 for the Cincinnati Bengals, this is going to be a quick one for me. It's going to be Tyler Booker. This team needs interior offensive line help. You could talk about defensive back here all you want. Again, having Ben Morrison return in this mock. But at the same time, as much as this is a really good defensive line class, and I think that there might be some pitchforks and some tiki torches when it comes down to taking offense in the first because your defense has been pretty atrocious. But I just want to say the only reason you guys are relatively competitive is because you have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Hate to say it, but that's the case. And you guys know damn well that your guards are horrible. And the easiest way to make it easier on Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and everybody is to get a damn good O-line. You spent it first last year on a tackle. Spend it this year on a guard. Tyler Booker is super high floor. You will not regret it. There's 0% chance that you regret it. So I'm extremely excited to take him there. At 24 for the Green Bay Packers, I'm having a trade up here. And that trade up is with the Washington Commanders. The Commanders, they are a little bit light on the pick. So I do think that we might be able to reach a little bit into the future maybe. We might even go pick 145 for this equation. Because pick 145, I feel comfortable giving back 198. Again, 120 is the capital from 17 to 15. So this is just a little bit less for a far lower end deal. I feel very comfortable with that. And to be fair, when you think about it from Green Bay's perspective, we move back 2 spots, get the same guy, and we get to move up, 53 spots. So I'm happy with it, but the Commanders move up to secure their guy here in Luther Burden. They do need another primary weapon to be able to have, especially in the short game, being able to have a nice dump-off weapon. At number 25 for the Los Angeles Chargers, let's get cute with it. Colson Loveland still on the board, which to be fair, Colson Loveland is sitting at number 35 on my board. I did not see the progression I was hoping to this year. And of course, the offense wasn't really conducive for development. So I respect it, but we take Colson Loveland there at 25. Leaving the Green Bay Packers here at 26. And with Jair Alexander being out, I do think that there is a lot more of a spotlight on how dire your cornerback need is. And we're looking at Ravel and Amos, Porter, Azariah Thomas. I love Azariah Thomas. I really do think that he could be the pick above all of them. But we're actually going to go after a more physical player here in Trey Amos. He kind of bucks the system. Siobhan Ravel's the better fit for Jeff Hafley. But I think Trey Amos is the far superior player. Man, you got to go fit, though. I mean, that's like me. That's very hypocritical of me to say, oh, I'm going to go after the better player. Because players perform in their systems, and a player who is slightly worse in Revel, in my opinion, who's in a better system, will probably perform better than a better player in a system that doesn't fit him, right? Let's be real here. That's the smarter thing to do. Let's go Siobhan Revel here. We got a free pick out of it as well. That's a good way to go about it. At number 27 for the Baltimore Ravens, I think they're in the perfect position to go best player available. And interior of the offensive line, I do hope you guys bring back Ronnie Stanley, and I'm praying to God that that's exactly what happens. If it is, then I'm going to go Wyatt Milam here out of West Virginia. He's been fantastic as a left tackle, but arm length concerns are massive. He allowed 0 pressures until he had a big hand injury, and not a big hand injury, but something that obviously changed the way he played, because after that, that's when he started struggling, even against a worser competition. So when he's healthy, this guy was absolutely locked down, worth a top 15 pick in terms of just being that efficient and that good versus that level of talent. And so you're going to use him as a guard in this offense, but you're just going best player available in a position that is always in need. And Wyatt Milan's been dealing with Garrett Green, who stylistically is not too far away from Lamar Jackson in terms of the quantity of mobility moves that he makes. Like, he's not just going to be a statue in the pocket. Garrett Green likes to move around, so he's going to be comfortable doing that as well. And number 28 for the Minnesota Vikings. Remember when I was telling you, Titans fans, about us doing something a little special? We're going to do it again. So I know there's a trade back spot here. So my goal is, like, we can either do it with New York or Tennessee. I'm going to go and I'm going to throw a curveball here. Tennessee traded up for a quarterback before. They're going to trade up for a quarterback again. And we might say, hey, we're a little bit limited on picks, Alex. Like, we got to watch out, right? Like, we're a little bit skewed here. And the Vikings don't really have much to give us back in the first place as well. And I say, that's valid. But at the same time, we do have an asset that we can move for picks. So we're going to trade up with the Titans here. And it's going to take a little bit more than 102, in my opinion, because you have that 5th-year contract. And I will say that the Giants need to be bidding for this. The Raiders need to be bidding for this. But at the same time, you know, you do have Sam Darnold out there. You do have J.J. McCarthy out there. I will say that the Vikings could end up trading one of those assets in this equation. But I'm going to say Sam Darnold leaves in free agency. And he actually could end up signing with one of these teams. And you know what? Based on the fact that I've been very uncomfortable with taking a QB for the Raiders, we could end up putting him on the Raiders. How about that? So we're going to trade up with the Tennessee Titans. Pick 102 is perfectly requisite. I think maybe you can end up squeezing a 176 in the equation, but we're going to have it just be those two. The Titans, though, you know, we talked about how Sam Darnold should be on the Raiders, or he could be on the Giants for that matter. But I mean, it just depends on which spot he wants to go to. To be fair, the Giants are a better location. Either way, there's two teams trying to move up here. Where do we want Sam Darnold going? It's a little bit late to be deciding this, but the bottom line is I'm trading Will Levis to the team that doesn't have him. And you know what? Sam could want to go back to New York. He could also not want to go back to New York. You know what? We're going to say he doesn't want to go back to New York. He wants to go with Tom Brady. We're going to stick with the Raiders. We're going to send Will Levis to the New York Giants because it's going to be cheap. The Giants are going to spend pretty much nothing on Will Levis. It's going to be pick 153 for the Titans to be able to give, we could do 176. You know what? We're going to do that. 176 and Will Levis goes for 153 and 217, and being able to get the Titans an extra pick in that equation. So Will Levis is traded, but the Tennessee Titans are going to go Shedeur Sanders, and here's why. You got Travis Hunter. Like, I told you, I was going to big brain this shit. We got Shedeur Sanders as well as Travis Hunter, and again, we're going off of the premise, because again, this is based on what we are seeing right now in all the mock drafts, very improbable, but it is a very realistic situation where teams don't feel comfortable with the quarterbacks. And so I want to be able to represent that philosophy or that theory with being able to say, hey, there's a little bit of an increased demand for Shedeur Sanders at this point because, well, Sam Darnold's in Las Vegas. Now you got Will Levis in New York. And so you got Shedeur Sanders there in Tennessee, and then maybe you could end up seeing like Russell Wilson go to New York or anything like that. You can do that on your own, but Shedeur Sanders is going to be pairing back up with Travis Hunter. It's a little bit expensive, and now we've kind of depleted the Titans of their picks, but I do think it's worth the thought. At number 29 for the Buffalo Bills, just going after best player available is super duper key, and this team could definitely utilize someone like Kenneth Grant at this point. I just don't think you can pass on the potential of somebody who is still raw and still developing. And he's technically going to the Shrine Bowl, but apparently it's just because he's not healthy enough. I don't know what's up with that, but Kenneth Grant, just untapped potential at 340 pounds and a really good athlete, great motor. Can't really say no. Philly, I would love to trade out of this spot. I don't see anybody being desperate enough to trade for it. So we're going to go the most Philadelphia pick I could probably think of, and that would be going after Mike Green. I know you guys love it. It goes a little bit against my board, even though I really like Mike Green. I would say that if you guys didn't bring back Mekhi Becton, Jonas Savania, really good guy to be able to develop, but I think you could also do that later in the draft as well. So we're going to go after Mike Green here. I just don't see anybody trading up. And so that's the selection there. For the Kansas City Chiefs, this is a quick one to the podium. It is Trey Amos. I mean, getting another boundary corner is super duper key, and he is just an absolute stud. I think it's totally worth it. And at number 32 for the Detroit Lions, you're sitting in a key position here to be able to take whatever you want. I do think center is a position you need to proactively prepare for. Also guard, technically. There is Christian Mahogany there. I don't think the edge rushers really get me too excited because of the potential value at 64. But like for the Eagles, I really think that Vic Fangio is like going to love Mike Green. So the player who I'm thinking of moving up for, you got Jahdae Barron here, but a player I really like, and there's two of them. There's Jonas Savania and there's Josh Connerly. And I think there are some teams that are looking at offensive tackle, one of them being the Cleveland Browns here, that I think need to be able to prioritize some offensive line. And one of those is also the Patriots. Like the Patriots should certainly be at least on the move and thinking about a move up here, because you got your wide receiver, you still need to go and address that offensive line. I could see the Giants as well being able to look at offensive line, and because you have all of that, let's be able to theorize a trade first between the Patriots and the Lions, and look at the amount of picks. I mean, we got that extra pick there. Holy shit, we got that extra pick from moving back with the Jaguars. Is that not fucking brilliant? Like, that is the right move. Like, pick 92 to move up to this spot. Like, maybe you have to toss in something else. Maybe you toss in like 215. Like, do that on your own. But we basically gave ourselves the freedom to move up here, and the Lions got got a third round pick. So we're moving up with the New England Patriots, and we are selecting a left tackle there and Josh Connerly. That is ridiculous value. So you got Josh Connerly as well as Tetairoa McMillan to totally revamp this offense. You got your true left tackle as well as your X wide receiver. But that's the video for today. Stay tuned tomorrow for rounds 2 and 3. I love you. See you on the far side. Peace.